I want to start by doing a little what we call pollster housekeeping. We always start when we review a survey by talking about the methodology. This was an 800 sample survey of registered Michigan voters. We conducted it on June 1st through the 6th, has a margin of error plus or minus 3.5%. 86% of the conversations were on cell phone, 14% were on landline. So I want to start the conversation by looking back. Specifically, I want to look back to October before the November election, where we did a very similar poll. And we wanted to ask voters back in October, how confident or not confident are you that the November election would be fair and accurate? Last fall, voters were at 77% confident to 18% not confident. So we asked the question again, where are we now that the election's done? 76 to 17, exactly where we were statistically, meaning what people thought was going to happen in their minds did happen, and that's a good thing. But there was one perceptible shift. For those who were confident, we asked, are you very confident or somewhat confident? Those who are very confident last October were at 38%. Now, when they look back, they're 53% confident. So the confidence surged in terms of looking back, people were confident that the election was fair. Trump voters, they were not confident at 35% last fall. That's fallen to 20, looking back. Harris voters, they increased their lack of confidence from 4% to 16%. But I think it's still important to point out their lack of confidence is still lower than the Trump voters, even though the Trump voters won the election. So we asked about confidence in local elections. And we did this in October, and we did it again. How confident are you that your local county elections are fair and accurate? Last fall, 78% were confident. This spring, that number climbed to 88%, a 10% increase in confidence. Those who distrust or lacked confidence fell from 15 to 8. And one thing that's interesting here is who shifted, where those numbers changed. If you distrusted your local elections last fall, it was 4% of Harris voters, but 27% of Trump voters. Now, 6% of Harris voters and 10% of Trump voters. They've balanced out. So trust in local election accuracy and fairness surged following this election. We also asked, how about other counties in Michigan? Do you trust or not trust that they are fair and accurate? It was 52, it's gone up to 55, but distrust has fallen from 22 to 16. And we saw this in the fall, we see it again. A lot of voters are saying they just don't know about other counties, but they do trust their county. So we asked, did Michigan do a better job this election, a worse job, or about the same job as they've always done this election? 55% said they've done the same job. 27% said they did a better job. And 8% either didn't know or just didn't have an opinion. And it's those Trump voters who said Michigan did a better job. And the Harris voters said Michigan did the same job. All right. So looking ahead to 2026, we wanted to ask the same question. How confident or not confident are you in the upcoming election? 79 to 12 voters are confident in next November's election. And what's important in these numbers, because they look just like the past election, but what's important, what shifted, is we see no differences by party affiliation or who you chose for president. So Democrats, Republicans, Independents all have a similar confidence in the upcoming election, and that's really important. So we asked, are you satisfied with Michigan's election system, or do you think major changes need to be made? 72% are satisfied with Michigan's election system. 22% say major changes need to be made. If you're a Democrat, 14% say major changes. If you're an independent, 20%. And if you're a Republican, it jumps up to 32%. So we ask those people who say major changes need to be made, we ask them in an open-ended question, what changes? Number one, 21% require voter ID to vote. Interestingly, I think our panel is going to have something to say about that because that's the law in Michigan, is to provide ID. Second, better security, 10%. 9%, vote counting needs to be monitored. 9% of those people actually said we need to stop absentee ballots. And 8% said check citizenship before allowing voting. Now, while we've made huge progress from last fall to now in confidence in the election, that doesn't mean we don't have major differences on the issues. So one of these questions we asked, we told them that 11 legislators had challenged the results of the 2018 and 2022 constitutional amendments that Michigan voters passed that set absentee voting law, drop box laws, all these laws for Michigan elections. We told them their argument was that the Constitution gave legislatures the authority to determine the election law, not voters. So we asked them, who should have the final say? Should it be the state legislatures or should it be the voters? And on this, boy, there's a lot of agreement. 82% said voters should have the final say on election law in Michigan. Only 11% said state legislatures. So we wanted to get at the issue of concerns in the election. And we asked, how concerned or not concerned are you with non-citizens voting in Michigan's election? By 57%, a majority of Michigan voters are at least somewhat concerned. 40% are not concerned. But it's the intensity of the concern that really sticks out here. If you're very concerned, only 9% of Democrats are very concerned, 31% of independents, but 65% of Republican voters are very concerned that non-citizens are voting in the election. And that's best illustrated between voters that voted for Trump versus Harris. If you're a Harris voter, only 9% are very concerned. If you're a Trump voter, 67% are very concerned. As anybody who talks to me knows, I pay a lot of attention to what independents think, because in Michigan, independents make the decisions in this state. 59% are at least somewhat concerned of independents, but only 31% very concerned, 38% not concerned. We wanted to get a sense of how big is this problem? So we asked voters, are thousands of non-citizens voting, hundreds, less than 100, or none? And the numbers I'm going to share with you are those that say thousands are voting. So if you're a base Democrat, only 9% say thousands of non-citizens are voting. 26% of independents, but a majority, 54% of Republicans say thousands of non-citizens are voting. So we asked, do the current federal and state laws, which require you to provide ID or sign an affidavit, are those sufficient, or do these laws need to be tougher? On this, 54% said they need to, 54%, 54 to 40 say they are sufficient. So a majority of voters, despite their concerns, say the laws are sufficient. But again, big differences by party. Not unexpectedly by the numbers I gave you, Democrats think they're sufficient. Republicans want tougher laws. Independents, by almost a 2-to-1 margin, say the current laws are sufficient. So we asked those who wanted tougher laws, what do you want to see? 27% said valid ID at registration. 21% required proof of citizenship. So Michigan may face a constitutional amendment potentially that would require proof of citizenship to register and require the Secretary of State to verify the citizenship of every registered Michigan voter. By a margin of 66 to 28, Michigan voters would support that. 47% would strongly support it, 18% somewhat. Democrats oppose it. Independents support it 70 to 23, Republicans support it 91 to 6. We asked each element individually, requiring proof of citizenship to register to vote. Voters support that 71-26. On the question of verifying the citizenship of every registered voter, it's at 65 to 30. We did ask them about one provision in this that's unique, though, and that is if you are a married woman, you do not have a birth certificate likely with your name because of the marriage. So you would be required, a married woman would be required to provide a valid passport or a marriage license to confirm their citizenship with their name. And we asked voters, do you support or oppose that? This is where they split. 48% support, 47% oppose. And what's really interesting, and it caught my attention, there is not a difference by gender. I would have expected women, far more women opposed. The genders are the same. It is political affiliation that shifts your position on that issue. We asked about same-day registration, which these ballot proposals have done in Michigan. Do you support or oppose allowing people to register to vote on the day of the election? By a margin of 54 to 44, voters support it. Trump voters oppose it 36 to 66. Harris voters support it 77 to 20. For those who are opposed, we asked, what would you like to see? And the vast majority of them said they wanted to go back to the 30-day requirement that Michigan had prior to these ballot proposals. We asked if they support or removing voters that haven't voted in 10 years, moving them off the lists. By a margin of 40 to 57, they're opposed to purging those voters who haven't voted in 10 years or more. And it's interesting, the Trump voters who very much support tougher standards, they were only at 55 to 42 on this one. And that's the shift in the numbers overall. We told them that these constitutional amendments allow Michigan to accept ballots from military overseas ballots for up to 6 days after the election to be counted. And that President Trump had signed an executive order saying, nope, it's got to be on election day to be counted. And we asked the voters, which should Michigan follow? By a margin of 60 to 35, they said the Michigan Constitution. And Democrats were at 95% for the Constitution. Independents were 2 to 1, 62-32 to follow the Constitution. But Republican voters were 22 to 70. They said follow the executive order. And finally, we asked them about a potential ranked choice voting ballot proposal in Michigan that would implement ranked choice voting in the state. And we gave them a brief explanation of what that was. Voters do not support it. By a margin of 26 to 65, they opposed ranked choice voting. And this is one where both sides of the aisle heartily agree they do not support ranked choice voting. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mark.
Thank you, Richard. Fascinating findings. Just fascinating findings and so relevant today. We're going to give our esteemed board members a chance to give their experience, their perspective, their reaction to these numbers. And again, we are just blessed to have them here, this bipartisan board. And so why don't we start with Governor Jim Blanchard, if you'd be willing to share your reaction to these poll results, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you. As the oldest member of this panel, I'm going first. I do want to tell everyone, thank you for coming. And also what a joy and delight it is to work with John Engler and Mike Bishop and John Cherry. And it is a bipartisan group of us. And we agree on the importance not only of voting in Michigan, but that our system is good, it's well run, it's fair, it's accurate. But I want to mention something about Gerald Ford. I can't resist. You guys will indulge me. I was elected to the United States Congress 51 years ago. I knew what I was doing. It was a lifelong dream, actually, from the time I was 14. And I was elected 4 months after Gerald Ford had become president. And so it was exciting to be a new member of Congress. It was exciting to have, even though it was a different party, a president from my state. And what was really exciting was even before we were sworn in, all the new members of Congress were invited to the White House for a reception to meet the president. And in those days, the security was good, but not like it is now. So here I am driving my brand new Ford LTD in Washington, D.C., down Pennsylvania Avenue and going in the side gate of the White House with a guy just checking my driver's license and pulling up right behind the diplomatic entrance and walking up the stairs. And there I see Gerald Ford there with Henry Kissinger. And I thought, God, I've arrived. God, I can't believe this. And I saw a table with some matches with the presidential seal, and I grabbed one. And I went over to introduce myself. I said, by the way, Mr. President, could I have your autograph? So anyway, I got it, put it on my desk and had it there for years and years. But it was so exciting. And I might add, we miss Jerry Ford. I wish you were president, ladies and gentlemen. I do, truly. You can appreciate that. So, and as I recall, Governor, you have made sure that we have a place to honor President Ford in the Capitol. Is that right?
That's right.
So here we are. Look, the people of this state overwhelmingly support our election system. They believe it's to be fair and accurate. And that's really the significant thing. I think what's interesting in the polling data, Richard, is that somewhat more people believe the next election will be even more accurate and well-run than the last election. That is 2026. So that's really exciting as well. The other thing that's really interesting is that while they trust our election system, despite the fact that lots of critics keep trying to make fun of it, they support it substantially. They also support their local elections even more so, which means that I think they realize locally they trust the people who are administering it. How many of you, by the way, have worked elections here? Yeah, so there are, all right. It's your neighbors. It's the people in your community who are there, who ask you for your ID when you register and work the elections. And I think it's fair to say that the people who work these elections deserve our respect and our appreciation. And that's really another message, I think. It's also true that our polling data shows that the people support the people deciding election laws, not the politicians in Lansing. They're wary of politicians in Washington or Lansing tampering or tinkering with election laws. They trust the people to establish those laws and maintain them. So finally, let me again say, let's thank all the election workers and the clerks from our cities and townships and counties. Yes, Lisa. Let's thank them and look forward again to another good, fair, accurate election in our great state of Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Blanchard. I'd now like to invite Governor Engler to make a few remarks, share his perspective on our poll.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. And let me join Governor Blanchard and both recognizing all of you who came here, and especially those who worked in elections. We're unbelievably grateful for that. And Michigan's unique. Lisa Pastavasline will make some comments later. She can attest to this as an expert, has worked at the local level, been a county clerk. We have our 83 counties, but we don't run elections really on a county level in Michigan. It's down to the township and the city, and it works up through the county. One of the things that I think, as we look at how we continue to rebuild awareness and confidence of the checks and balances that are in the system, is we could speed up the counting. That's one of the things that you wonder at a state like Florida, which went through a lot of turmoil a few years ago, they now can count their elections pretty fast and get the results out in the evening. And sometimes it takes a while. And I think we could do better there, but I am very excited by the numbers that Richard presented today. The confidence level is high, and I think it's, the strong belief that we've got a system that works is there. And you've seen the numbers, I mean, overwhelming super majorities, 75, 3 out of 4 voters. And even on the areas where there could be improvement, I think there's a sense that there are ways to make this better, but and we're working on them. I think one of the advantages, we were talking earlier this morning among ourselves about real ID, and there's a distinction in Michigan, which maybe it's a little technical to get into today, but enhanced ID versus enhanced real ID versus just the real ID, which one is firmly establishing citizenship versus the other one, which establishes you as a Michigan resident, Michigan voter, but maybe doesn't attest to the citizenship. There's work that could be done in that area, perhaps. And I think that would very much help with the issues and the concerns that exist about same-day registration. But the effort on our part, this Defending Democracy project is not just in Michigan, it's in several other states. I think we happen to have the most maybe interesting foursome. Generally in the states, there's 4 leaders representing both parties that have come together, and they're in key states, places like Georgia and Pennsylvania, where there have been contested elections. North Carolina would be another one, out west in Arizona, where there have been issues and concerns on the part of the public. And the purpose of the project nationally is to go to these states that have been in the news and see what can be done to lower the temperature and to get the facts out and to fix the challenges that might be there. And I think you see from the data, we've done pretty well in Michigan, and the effort, it should continue. We should continue to talk about some of these challenges. We should be, as Governor Blanchard just mentioned, continuing to talk about the role of local officials who are running these elections. I mean, we as candidates don't run elections, we're in them, but we're certainly concerned about the outcome, and we want it to be fair. But the administration is done by Lisa, 82 other county clerks, and thousands of local officials who maybe once, twice, several times a year come forward and serve as election boards. And so we would like to see just continued improvement where we can get that, and continuing efforts to increase the understanding of what's already in place. And that's especially true about ID. You have to have an ID. You have to have an ID, enter all kinds of buildings. You have to have an ID to do almost anything, it seems like these days. And certainly there's nothing, and there's tremendous public support for the principle that when you go to vote, you ought to be able to show an ID. Nobody really is arguing that, I don't think. And to the extent it is argued, it's hard to take that argument serious because, again, we're so used to pulling out the ID for, we almost all could be wearing around our necks these days. It seems like we're pulling them out if you're going anywhere. I just bought a bottle of wine. Where's my ID? They wanted my driver's license. I thought I was old enough probably to buy that bottle of wine, but where's your ID? And so if I've got to do that, I mean, certainly don't think it's an imposition when I'm casting my ballot. And I want to thank Jim Blanchard, John Cherry, and Mike Bishop for the work they've done. And our team, the staff that backs us up, has done a nice job. But we appreciate you coming out today. We especially appreciate the media, because the media plays such a big role in this. And one of the things we've tried to really stress is for the media in covering elections and politics, don't cover it based on stuff that appears in social media, and don't pull stuff off the internet and treat that as a factual basis, because oftentimes that is made up, and it's very much on, from the perspective of whoever wrote it and whatever acts they're trying to grind. But come to us. We'll be glad to talk about that. Let us get you to the local clerks so they can talk about it, but let's get the facts out there. And for the media in writing these stories, don't write the inflammatory story first and then let everybody spend weeks trying to do cleanup later. Let's get the story written in the beginning with whatever the complaint is. Let's get all sides of that aired out to start with so we don't leave people confused and angry because they think something's been rigged against them when in fact what was rigged was the comment that started the whole discussion in the first place. So that's what our job is to do, and we're hoping to do an even better job as we go forward. So Mark, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor Engler. Appreciate your remarks and your perspective. And thanks for your service to Michigan. I also want to do a friendly reminder. We have a couple of media outlets that have joined us via live stream. If you have questions for our board, for our panel, or our pollster, please put those questions into the chat and we will get to those questions during the Q&A session. And with that, I would like to invite Lieutenant Governor John Cherry to give his remarks.
Well, thank you very much, Mark, and it's a pleasure to be here today with you and my colleagues and Kent County Clerk Lisa Lyons-Posthumus. It's a pleasure to be here because the effectiveness and the health of every democratic institution rests on a foundation of elections that have to be fair, accurate, and transparent. And it's exciting to see this poll suggest that in Michigan, that's what the public sees here. And what's really important about this poll, I think, is I believe what I saw was that for the first time, nearly everyone of every political persuasion has confidence in this election. That's the change that's really occurred here. And I think that's because of the very hard work that Lisa and her colleagues have done as election administrators in explaining the process and the expectations that voters have about how elections are conducted in Michigan. And that's what strengthened this process. And as Governor Engler pointed out, there are going to be there's still desires for changes, and there's going to be a need for debate. But I think the role that we all play, ourselves, this panel, you, and very importantly, the media, is to talk about those debates in the context of accurate information, a sense of what really transpires. There will be people who will want to take these debates and provide some misinformation, perhaps try to inject some degree of fear in the process. But the truth is that Michigan's process is a healthy one. And as Governor Blanchard mentioned, these elections are conducted by our neighbors. And that's what I think gives us in Michigan some level of confidence that elections are here, that are fair, accurate, and transparent. So I want to thank Richard for the polling information. I think it tells a very good story, but it's a story that we all have to spread because the health of our democracy depends upon that social consensus. And we have it now. We need to continue to build on it, and we need to preserve it. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Cherry. Appreciate you and appreciate your service. I'd like to kick it over to Congressman Mike Bishop for your perspective on our poll today.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you to all for being here today for a civil discussion on policy in the state. It's nice to have a group that actually can talk civilly and a group like this to engage us, to have a discussion about what's important for the state of Michigan, really, frankly, for the republic itself and the foundational principles of our country, most importantly, the election process. I also wanted to say hello to Tanya Shoemaker, former state senator, who is also with us here today. I noticed that she was in the room, and I want to make sure that she was recognized. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Warren, good to see you as well. I should see that, but I'm totally blinded, and I'm going by sound alone. you heard a lot of numbers today, and it can get confusing. And the good news is that what we can take from those numbers is that public confidence in our system is on the rebound, and that's important. But we also need to know that that's very fragile. So this process of engaging this discussion is important because we need to continue to improve the confidence in the system. And as Lieutenant Governor Cherry said earlier, the voters want to be a part of this. They want to be in control of this process. And the citizens have had some reforms back in 2022, and we're seeing those implemented now. Last two election cycles have seen continued improvement. But for the most part, our citizens want transparency and they want fairness in the process. And most of all, they want to know that election integrity is important to all of us, not just a talking point, not just something that elected officials like to throw out there every once in a while and discuss to make them look like they're virtuous about this process. But this has got to be something that's constantly on the table for discussion. This message the polling numbers should hit heavily with lawmakers, election officials, and the media. It's encouraging to see this kind of forward progress. We love to see it. But man, if we know anything, the trust in the citizens of this state and this country is extremely fragile. And misinformation is really causing problems in our country. And it comes from all different areas. And so if we allow to let it spread, it takes root and causes doubt. And that's what really erodes trust. So we, as an electorate, as members of elected government, as members of the public in general, we have to continue to message confidence in the process and how it works. That means we have to be better at communicating our positions. And that also requires us to educate each other about what the laws are currently, and that each of us expect the rule of law to be followed. The rule of law is important, and all of us should view it as something that is our duty as citizens to ensure that it continues to be important. One thing I'm also seeing that from this poll that I think is important that was stated was that citizens of the state and this country want to make sure that U.S. citizens vote and that have continued to have their vote counted. And that shouldn't be controversial. It should be common sense. There are ways to address that issue, and I think we're having good discussions about that in the public about how to best ensure that that happens. And whether that's enhanced IDs in the future, improving data sharing, or giving election officials the tools they need, whatever it might be, like Lisa, to make sure that we have U.S. citizens voting in these elections. And finally, I think I want to make sure that we make the point that this process belongs to the voters, not the parties, not the elected officials, not the unelected bureaucrats. This should belong to the people. They've made it very clear in this poll that they want control of this. They're tired of the partisanship and they want all the partisanship noise to stop. So I agree with Governor Engler and Governor Blanchard and Lieutenant Governor Cherry. It's up to all of us to fight the misinformation and to spread this good news. And I just want to say that it's been a real joy. I'm very proud to work with Governors Engler and Blanchard and Lieutenant Governor Cherry on this board. I think it's important that we do that and give this civil discussion on important matters like this. One final note, I had a personal experience in this process as the general counsel for the Michigan Republican Party in the last election cycle. Yes, I was the general counsel for the Michigan Republican Party, and I get looked at sometimes very crossly by people when I say that. But as that job began to take hold, I was given a bigger job, and that was kind of the chief election integrity officer. And we assembled a group of volunteers from the public, from lawyers from all over the state to watch the process, to participate in the process, to help to ensure that we were messaging what the law was and how to be civil in this process. And I have to tell you that my experience in 2024 was incredible. We had a war room on election day, sun up to sundown. We were there taking calls, answering questions, and it was incredibly smooth. my hat's off to all the election officials out there, all of you who participated in that process, who went out of, out of your way to participate and volunteer your time. Hats off to elected leaders like Lisa Posthumous Lyons, who also led the charge to ensure that the rule of law was followed and that we tamped down any of these, issues that came up. So it was a great reflection for me to see it firsthand of how this works and how things have really progressed. We just need to continue educating the public, and that's how our republic will continue and to stay on strong footing. So again, thank you for keeping us company here today and participating in this discussion.
Thank you, Congressman Bishop. Appreciate your remarks and your perspective. I'd like to turn it over to our final panelist. That is the current clerk of Kent County, Lisa Posthumous Lyons, who also served in the Michigan House. Thank you for your service. So we have a perspective of someone who both has run elections and run in elections. So we welcome your reaction to our poll today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I so appreciate the opportunity to talk about elections. It is a huge passion of mine. Before we get too far in, I want to just take a moment and recognize you've heard mention up here that Michigan is uniquely decentralized in our elections process. And I believe firmly that that is a real notch in our belt when it comes to election security and integrity. But with that decentralization comes thousands of people that have to participate. And we have some of the best here in Michigan. We've got some of the best election inspectors, the poll workers in our state. And then I know I'm biased because I'm in Kent County, but with us today, we have Joel Hondorp, the city clerk in Grand Rapids. And we have Michael Sullivan and Abigail Hayden from my office in our elections division. So thank you guys for all of the work that you are doing. I think these poll numbers are very encouraging. Citizens deserve to have secure, transparent, fair elections. They deserve to know that that's what they're getting. Elections are the bedrock of this republic, and they're reliant upon public trust in the process. And public trust in the process is reliant upon understanding the process. That's really hard to do when there's so much noise coming from every which way, from all different directions, and you don't really know what's true, what to believe. I've been overseeing elections in Kent County. This is my 28th election. We're coming up on 29 in August. And after the 2020 election, it really became clear to me that beyond going into the polls or sitting down with their absentee ballot and casting their vote, our voters know very little about the process. And so, I was never really viewing my role as a clerk as such of an activist. I'm an administrator, but I've become really inclined to embrace a new role, and that is an ambassador of elections. I made it my mission to go anywhere, talk to anyone, and this is beyond Kent County. We've been up to the UP with some of our organizations that are partnering together to help educate the public. Ambassadors of elections educate the public. Ambassadors of election encourage participation in the process. And ambassadors of election welcome transparency in the process. Education, participation, and transparency are the keys to public trust once they understand how the process works. So these poll numbers really bear that out. After all these efforts, these last 3-4 years, leading into the 2024 cycle, we've had a number of my colleagues stepping up to educate the public about all the checks and balances that are in our process that work to keep our elections secure and work to keep them transparent and accurate. There are so many checks and balances on the front end, on election day and after the election, that really, once the public knows, they can have much more faith in the outcome of the election and in the process. But I do tell people, don't take my word for it. Come see for yourself. Take advantage of all the opportunities that are available in our process for the public to come and watch the pre-election equipment testing to ensure that our machines are functioning accurately, to ensure that they're counting and tabulating votes accurately. come to the polls on election day, be a poll challenger or be a watcher. Better yet, be an election inspector. Come and work the election. There's no better way to trust the election process than to help run the election process. And really seek information from election experts. There's, again, a lot of noise out there, but your local clerk, your county clerks, your neighbors, their friends, your family, your neighbors, those are the people that are working your elections. Ask them if you have questions. We're happy to share what we know. And I do think these efforts of education have really demonstrated through these poll numbers that the more people know, the more they're able to trust the process. And I think that is ultimately the key. So we can talk, I'm happy to touch on any particular polling numbers or data, but I just wanted to really extend my gratitude for people who are here. It's clear that you are interested in being an ambassador for elections. I'm so grateful to all these organizations, including Defending Democracy Project, who have kind of stepped up and stepped into the role to walk alongside election officials and election administrators and helping ensure our public has confidence that their elections are secure, transparent, fair, and accurate.
Thank you so much for your remarks. And let's thank, please, if we could thank our entire panel. This is a bipartisan panel of experts with deep experience. We are going to move to our questions from the